Dear Mr. Fantasy, play me a tune. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to have you with us here at Tom's Cabin. Pull up a stump and let's talk about our passion for books. This week, we are looking at fantasy books. Ooh, dragons, magic, castles, sorcerers, witches, fantasy. One of the most popular genres next to romance available today. Um, but before we get into that, we've got a wonderful author interview for you coming up. We've had some great, great shows here recently. Back at the first of the year, we had Sylvia Hubbard from the Motown Writers Network. We've also had women's fiction author Beth Biss. We talked about uh, the best new nonfiction books and little free libraries. We did a special on cookbooks. That was kind of cool. That was episode 31. And then we did a roundup of children's books just in time for the new year. And then, of course, our romance special, our books on romance. We did that for St. Valentine's Day. And coming up, we've got a special on Irish themed books and authors for St. Patty's Day. So tune in for that. And coming up for St. Patty's Day, we'll have a special on Irish themed books and authors. So tune in for that. That's going to be pretty special. That's my birthday. What else is happening? Lots of news this week and next, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's get right into it. Away we go. Fantasy is one of the most interesting genres available today. Our guest today, author Flavia Kennedy, she's from Brazil, I believe, she's a Fortune 500 marketing executive who has become an award-winning author, writing fantasy novels under the pen name of Andrews. Kind of mysterious. She's celebrated for her creativity and emotionally rich narratives, as well as not adhering to any kind of formula about particular genres. She's willing to bend the genre in order to tell her story. And her books are unique. From a young age, she found comfort in the fantastic worlds that she created with her imagination. And it wasn't until later in life that she found the courage to share those stories with the world. And she's got a debut series called The McTeer Legends, which includes 3 books: The Quest for Happiness, The Path to Trust, and Dare to Dream. They have become quite popular and really are a seamless blend. I've looked them over, a seamless blend between suspense, cozy romance, and fantasy. And they explore the themes of forgiveness, resilience, stick-to-itiveness, if that's a word. And her novels will be a welcome addition to your bookshelf. So please help me welcome fantasy author Flavia Kennedy.
Thank you, Tom, for having me.
There you are. Wow, what a great background.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's part of the fantasy, right? We're talking about fantasy. We have to be all integrated on the fantasy.
Now, that's the name of the series. It's McTeer
Legends.
McTeer. And what does that mean?
McTeer, if you separate the words, means wolf in Irish. So that was the inspiration came from.
And are the books set in Ireland, or do they have to do with
Yeah.
Irish Celtic culture?
Yes, it does. It does have a reality begun here in the US, in Colorado, and then it moved to Ireland, which is a pity because I haven't been there. So I have to really to search a lot about, and I love it. Every single detail that I found about the culture, the places, the beauty of the nature there is fantastic.
You know, it's so interesting that you say that. Two things. When we moved to Hawaii, I lived in Hawaii for like 10 years and worked at the Hawaii State Legislature. And the people that we bought our house from in Kailua on the windward side of Oahu had bought a house in Ireland and moved to Ireland. And he was a coder and involved in AI, and he moved to Ireland. And evidently, Ireland has a big tech sector, and evidently they love it. They love it over there. I spent 3 weeks over there in the Burn, up in the northern part of the country. You know, salmon streams, trout streams. The water is so clear you can drink it right out of the stream. And the people were so nice there in Ireland. But I digress. So tell me a little about this series of books. You have basically 3 books, and
Yes.
The Quest for Happiness, The Path to Trust, and Dare to Dream. There they are right there. Beautiful,
There they are.
beautiful book covers. And this is your pen name is Andrews.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Which is
I wanted to do something different than my professional brand. As you know, Tom, I've been executive for many years at HP. So when I began to write fantasy, I was still in the corporate world and I was still doing consulting. And I was afraid that if it became like a terrible flop, I would like hurt my professional brand. Luckily, it didn't, but I wanted to separate initially for exactly this reason.
So at the end of the board meeting, you basically bring out your books and start showing them. And no. So how did you? So I was reading over the books. I haven't had a chance to read them yet, but they are definitely on my nightstand. And how did you? You know, 1,000-year-old curse and got all kinds of things. How did you come up with these ideas?
That's funny. A lot of people relax when they go to bed. Some meditate, some count chips, right? In my case, I create stories, and I have done this since I was little. That was my coping mechanism about stress or life, or even to relax. And I have like this many different stories in my mind until I decided exactly to put this to life. And initially, I was going to talk about like a person transforming a course that's going to be like in a lion. Because I love lions. I always wanted to have a lion as a pet. As a kid, of course, I didn't have it. But my dream was like to read a book laying on the lion, like the beautiful mane, like in caress there, like a Kevin Richards in South Africa does, right? He has like this beautiful sanctuary, and he does this kind of things. I wanted to do that.
I begged you to get therapy. I begged you to get therapy.
No, so then I decided, I said, you know what? When I search about animals, and of course lions I have searched before, I noticed that lion is very independent kind of animal, not exactly the kind of personality that I was looking for in my books. So suddenly I decided, between all the search that I did, I thought that wolf with the McTire, my name came to life, was the best one. Is one that's made it for life. He is very family oriented. He's fun and friendly. Of course, he's very protective too, because of the territory. If you invade a wolf's or a pack territory, he might attack or might even escape, right? Either way, it's something that was thought that was interesting And then I came up with a course, and also the story.
I want to talk about that. Were you a reader as a child growing up in Brazil?
Yes, yes. I read a lot of, we have a lot of great writers in Brazil. And I was reading local books as a child. Of course, I read all the Disney books, of
And
course, right?
and that's
Fantasy, yes,
and that's in the language of Portuguese, right?
yes, yes.
Now, one
Uh,
question I've always had, if you read a book in Portuguese and you read a book in English, do you see any differences there?
I never compare book to book because if I already read in Portuguese, I didn't reread in English.
Right.
But I would assume that yes, because the Portuguese they use more words, like Spanish they use more words than in English, right? When you describe it, for example, if a book has 50 pages, it's going to have like probably 60 pages if you translate to Portuguese, English from Portuguese.
Well, you're writing under the pen name of Andrews, which is kind of unique. It's not a first name or anything, just boom, Andrews. I like that.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
that.
That was intentionally, yes.
Did that come about? Does that name mean something to you, or you just like the way it looks and sounds?
No, in reality, I search on Amazon names that are that could be on top of pages or could have no relationship with other books that I didn't want to have association with. So I did a little search on that. It was not a deep search, but yes, I found that name, and I didn't want to put a first name, a last name. Really live that neutral kind of approach.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your process. Would you say that you are a pantser and just sit down at the typewriter and type it out and let it flow out? Or are you a plotter? Do you plot everything out and have spreadsheets and all kinds of stuff like that?
In reality, on my personal life, I'm very organized. But when writing, I know how it's going to be the beginning, the middle, and the end. I know from the start. And I have always a document that describes, for example, how I want the characters. It's not like a super deep dive, but I have the characters like how they look like, a little bit of the personality, each one of the characters, which I noticed that when you write a series, it's crucial to have that. Now, otherwise, you get lost in some points. But I'm not the kind of person that's going to plot every scene beforehand. In that sense, I begin to do it. And the process that I create is very funny. When I'm doing exercise or walking around or doing swimming, whatever, is the time that I begin to think about that chapter and I come and begin to write. But the story plot is already defined in my mind, what I want to do, what are the moments of stress and what's going to be the top and the low. So it's everything in my mind, but I don't do that immense kind of plotting beforehand. And I think that takes a little bit of the joy, at least for me.
And how long would you say it takes you from concept to completion?
It depends because I'm still working other areas. So it's not only writing the book, right? I have two companies. I have the consulting. I have also in board of directors. So I have other professional responsibilities. But what have been taken until now is like 6 months to have all written, revised, draft, everything ready, and then I send to editor, which I noticed that is a very important step because my first books when I launched, and that's what I was saying that I was relaunching, the books when I launched, I simply put there, right? I received like a beta readers feedback. I received like I added there because I thought it was very important. I did some courses to learn. So it's not like, hey, one day I decided to write. And so I have to kind of integrate. I didn't like go crazy on the plotting and everything else, but I have to learn a little bit because in marketing, you are used to tell the benefits of the product or tell the things. On book, you have to show, right? Yeah, so when I began with that, I noticed like the differences and the beta readers that I had were outstanding. A development editor that helps me to really bring this kind of ideas to life. And then I use an editor to clean it up, which was not very good. And this time, when I said that I'm relaunching, I use a really very expensive, really good one that really clean it up, all the things like edits to make sure that the book has the best quality, and now invest in some marketing behind.
Well, you're doing this relaunch here in January, and that's very exciting, or did that back in January. But just in looking over the stories, I find them very inspirational. And you seem to have some reoccurring themes in there of overcoming adversity, dealing with discrimination. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically, when you look at the book, right, you're gonna see, and this is a benefit and also a disadvantage, because it's not a standard book in the genre specific same. I create like a werewolf book that's not about werewolves. It's about accepting to be different. As I said, it's a guy that like suddenly he was adopted, lived in US, and suddenly he began to feel some transformations in his body. His family from Ireland come to pick him up and inform that he's a werewolf. You look at that and say, wow, it's a werewolf. No, it's not. He hates to be a werewolf. He doesn't like that. So he has a hard time accepting that he's different, right? So the whole book, the first book at least, is about him accepting and using his new powers for good. What he's going to do with all these kind of powers that appear in his life. What he's going to do about that. How he's going to accept himself. How he's going to accept that he's going to be loved again, right? Or have a partner in the future. So all these kind of things is completely different from the traditional genre.
So it's not the fact that you just like aggressive, hairy men. No.
No.
So these books relaunched back in January, and it's really a fresh take on that werewolf shapeshifter kind of fantasy genre, which is very exciting. So I'm looking forward to reading them. Where can they find you? Is there a website?
Yes, I have a website that's also on Fantasy Books by Andrews. But I'm selling through Amazon right now. And in February, when I finish the select on Amazon, I'm going to expand and also to other libraries. So at this moment, I'm focused here. I have like some negotiations also in school libraries, because as I was talking about, the concept, right, is completely off. He looks human sometimes, depending on the power of the moon. He looks not so human, the hairy one, but he's handsome. Is a romance in the end of the day. Is a little bit romance, cozy romance, very sweet, very, very inspirational about really fighting against prejudice, fighting against all the other ones that comes in the second book. And then the third book comes even more accepting to live in a different world. So there's some very different approach to that. And it has been very accepted. And that's the reason I decided, you know what, now I'm going to begin to make it public. Because if you remember last time we talked, and I said, no, I'm not going to tell anything about my book. But now I'm telling, I'm promoting. I'm going to let my colleagues that I haven't done yet to know about that. I'm writing a book, fantasy book. So I'm assuming a little bit a different approach.
Well, wonderful. Available as an ebook too, I assume.
Ebook and paperback. I haven't done audiobooks yet. It's going to be for the near future. But at this moment, I'm focusing on the ones that sell the most, that are, sorry about that. They are like the ebooks and paperbacks.
And anything on the horizon that we should know about? And you're working on anything new?
Yes, I'm working. I have ideas for 2 more books on these segments as well. For the same series, I have 2 ideas. But I also began to write another book that's completely different. is also fantasy, romance a little bit. And again, it's not a traditional romance because it's about internal growth. It's not about something that is only romance. It's only like enemies to lovers, nothing like that. It's about the personal growth and he being accepted and turning to romance. So the other book is also as well. I already even have like the first draft, but I'm not going to work on that right now. I might go back to finish the series with the 2 more books.
And when you look at a new title like that, do you automatically intend to translate it into Portuguese or into other languages?
No, I didn't think about that yet. I will be translating to Portuguese and Spanish. I have a lot of friends in these regions as well. So I will be translating. That's going to be when I begin to open for distribution. I'm going to be translating that as well. But I didn't think about, I thought really when I began to think about titles, something that's inspiring, right? The quest for happiness. What can be more inspiring than that, right? You're trying to reach something that's awesome for you, is like is the perfect life, the quest for happiness. And then we're talking about the second one was the path to trust. Yes, he has some mishaps there, and he has to pursue again for people to trust him again, right? In the path to trust, he's going to be have to do a lot of changes in his life to accept being trusted again. And the last one is Dare to Dream. Yes, he's looking forward to combine his two worlds, right, together, the human and the magical. He's dreaming about that. He's going to get it? We don't know.
When you started that series, did you know it was going to be a multi-book series when you started working with the story?
No, in reality, as I was testing the waters, I only wrote the first one. And when I received like very good reviews and like a lot of great feedbacks, the ones that I didn't receive good reviews were because of the editing, which I fixed. So, and I noticed Grammarly alone is not enough. I have really to hire someone. But nevertheless, when I saw that has a good thing, I had other ideas. So I began to transform in a series. But yes, initially I was really testing the waters. And I didn't know if I was going to be a success or not. I received like 3 awards. That was like, wow. That for me was like the dream come true.
I always ask my guests this one question, so we have kind of a timeline there. If there was one thing that you wished readers knew about this new series of books, what would it be?
It's going to be that it's not the traditional werewolf or romance books, the shifter books. It is about really to inspire people, to make people think about what can they do good in their lives or how they can tap in their weakness or their strength, the power to be different. So all of this is the things that I would like them to know. And really like is the part I didn't really is a heartfelt story. Despite being like werewolf, despite being a very handsome guy, of course, very rich, all these kind of things that has in romance, of course, right? Yes, like him. And not scary one. He was nice. He was just received a course he doesn't deserve, and is trying to live the best way he can. So it's really to inspire people. And I could, at the time, interesting enough, at the time, I even thought about I could create like the person can have like an accident or is getting old or is like sick or could be anything, right? Is overcoming adversities, overcoming challenges in life. That's the whole thing in the book that I was trying to make it happen.
And I think that's one of the really cool things about the fantasy genre is that we suspend our disbelief, and anything you can basically come up with, you can write about and tell a story about.
Yes, makes a little bit more challenge to sell because, and this is a huge discussion that you can have. Do you want to go and be within the norms and do what is expected from you, right? So a young adult book that was initially the thought that I was doing, I'm going to go all the way and have to be like a young age, and they have to know everything. They have to fight all the dragons and everything else. So, or you can have a young adult that has a little bit more meat in it, a little bit more introspection that can teach you life lessons as well, right? Can you have a romance that's not about only attraction and power and passion, but can be also about a growth in friendship, right? So when you begin to have this kind of things, right, you come out of the shelf that's predetermined that you have to write this way and to be there. And when you come out of norms, it's more difficult to explain because here we're talking about and explaining the story, what's it about. But I have to tell the story in like one paragraph or two paragraphs at Amazon, right? And make people believe that this is like really great to read. People who have read, yes, liked, but it's more challenging to bring people because, okay, is it a romance? Is it a suspense? Or is it like a shifter? So you're kind of in the middle of all of this because it's not within the norms. And I don't care. I am very happy writing. As I said to my husband, I am very, very happy writing. I'm really like my is focused on females, even though my sons wrote read and they like it. But yes, the target audience is female, basically.
Now, what about on the reader side? Are you reading? Do you have time to read? What are you reading?
I try to make time to read. I until now, before I began to write fantasy, I was reading much more like business, right? So Steve Jobs biography, Warren Buffett biographies, right? And Elon Musk and all these, right? So I like very much about leadership and business. But when I began with the fantasy, I began to read a little Sarah Maas. I like very much her books there, right? The way she writes, Patricia Briggs, Elise Kova. So I have all these kind of things that are within the genre because I also need to learn how to write it. So I've begun to get some inspiration on people that's pretty famous, millions of books. So what they're doing right, I can learn from that.
Well, we'll have your link to the in the show notes. We'll have your link in the show notes, and we really appreciate you coming by. And when the other books come out, will you come back and talk to us?
Oh yes, It's always a pleasure talking to you. I'm so glad that you have this program, and I wish you tremendous success here. You're doing a great thing for authors. Yes.
Thank you so much for coming by. How about
Thank
it for
you.
Flavia Kennedy and the McTeer Legends books? And what are they? The Quest for Happiness, Dare to Dream, and Path to Trust.
Yes.
Go check
Yes.
them out. Thanks so much. God bless.
Bye. Thank you.
From the sea, from the air, from the land, the latest in news and perspectives on books and music here at Tom's Cabin. Well, not a whole lot going on in the publishing world this week. Of course, we've got the ongoing Anthropic settlement going on. Steal your story, use it to train your robot, and then not give the author anything. No, not on this watch. We're gonna anyway. And you know, as springtime comes now, and in the northern part of the country, things start to thaw out, think about getting yourself a little free library. You can buy a pre-built one for about 350 bucks. You can make your own. You can convert different stuff. I saw the other day, I saw a cooler, redneck engineering. He put the cooler on top of the post, and then to reach inside and get the books, you opened up the cooler like that and reached in there and got some books. So uh, that's pretty cool. And the current administration is um, kind of have a warpath on books and on libraries. They want to privatize libraries. They want to take the federal government out of supporting uh, libraries, which is unfortunate. Same thing with education, of course, but that's another matter, and we don't really talk politics here on the show. But we can if you want to. That's a great thing about things here at the cabin. We can talk about anything we want to, and we do. And once again, if you have some show ideas or some comments, good or bad, just send it along to us. Bookinfo at nextstopparadise.com. And that includes if you want to come on and do a little book report. Maybe you found a treasure, a little treasure. I love going into bookstores. I've always loved this. Love going into bookstores and finding a volume that nobody's ever heard of before and that I, in 1,000 years, wouldn't have found unless you do those book dives. And we're going to start having some of those on the show. We're going to do shelf dives, take a look at your bookshelf. You can send me a picture, bookinfo at, yeah. Um, we're going to do book hauls. I'm going to take you to our local bookstore, my local bookstore, and kind of show you how I shop for books and get the lay of the land. So that's coming up. And then also, I'm going to take you to what I think is one of the world's best, coolest bookstores. It's in Seaside, down on 30A on the Emerald Coast. The owner there is just a wonderful, wonderful lady, and Sundog Books. So we're going to be taking a visit to there. And if you've got pictures of your favorite local independent bookstore, send me a picture of it. Here are a couple of pictures. Here are a couple of pictures of small independent bookstores or book cafes, as it were. Uh, Check them out. Hey, I want to point out that in the channel description, there is a list of past guests. We'll keep track of that so you can go back and listen to or watch rather some of the shows with cool author interviews that we've had or special segments. So check that out. That's in the channel description. It's a list of shows, past shows. So check out in the channel description our new list of past shows, which will help you zoom in on your favorite author and or segment. That's in the channel description, not the show description, the channel description. And every show, by the way, should have timeline so you can zoom in and find exactly the content that you want. You're also going to start to see many more shorts on the channel. I'm going to take out some of the, over the past, say, 40 shows that we've had, I'm going to take out little segments. You want little piecemeal and exact segments of the show, we're going to give that to you in our shorts section. So check that out. Hey, circle the date on your calendar, March 28th. It's a Saturday. It's coming up in just a couple of months. Books on the Bay 2026. Right here in Pensacola, City of Five Flags. Make it a point to come as a exhibitor or as a reader. Books on the Bay, it's going to be a blast. They have announced the dates for 2026 for Author Nation and Reader Nation. Make it a point to come by next November in Las Vegas, Nevada. Dear Mr. Fantasy, play me a tune. Fantasy books. Fantasy. Fantasy is a speculative fiction format that involves supernatural or magical elements, often including completely imaginary realms and creatures. Well, I was looking for a compact, exact, accurate definition for what is fantasy. What is the fantasy genre in books? And here's what the computer came up with. Fantasy is a genre of speculative fiction that involves supernatural and magical elements, often including completely imaginary realms and creatures. So throw reality out the door for the sake of the story and your enjoyment. It is really the second most popular genre available today. Number one being romance, of course, which we covered a couple weeks ago. It is fascinating to me, and I'm fairly new. An acquaintance of mine, S.D. Houston, helped turn me on to the fantasy genre, and we're going to talk about her books. The genre's roots lie in literature and drama, even from the beginning of time, from Shakespeare's days. But it really became popular in the 20th century, and it has expanded into various media, including films, television, animation, video games. It's distinguished from the other genres, especially of science fiction and horror, by the absence of anything scientific or scary. Although these can sometimes occur in fantasy novels, they really aren't very technical as far as the scientific technology goes. In popular culture, the fantasy genre predominantly features settings that reflect the actual Earth, but fantasy novels always have that otherworldly feel to them. They build worlds in fantastical places and ways. Magic practitioners, witches, like I was saying, sorcerers, and so on, and magical creatures. Dragons, of course, one of my favorites, are common in these worlds that fantasy authors build. An identifying trait of fantasy is the author's use of narrative elements that do not have to rely on history or nature to be coherent. We, we throw off our disbelief. And in writing fantasy, the author uses world building to create characters, situations, and settings that aren't necessarily possible in reality. Next to romance, it's the second most popular genre and generates the second highest in sales every year. Fantasy books. So I think the thing I like most about fantasy novels, and I'm a newbie just starting to read this genre. Mostly I read books and have left there blowing stuff up in the first couple pages. You know, anyway, but I think the thing I like about the fantasy genre the most is you suspend your disbelief and anything you can think of in your mind, and you can create any world you can create, any magic abilities that you can come up with in your mind, you can write and put on the page and you can read about. And there are so many different sub genres in fantasy. There's the romantasy, half romance, half fantasy, and I am fascinated by it. So I'm very excited to explore these 10 fantasy books with you. I think the thing I like most about fantasy novels, and I'm a newbie just starting to read this genre. Mostly I read books and have left there blowing stuff up in the first couple pages. You know, anyway, but I think the thing I like about the fantasy genre the most is you suspend your disbelief. And anything you can think of in your mind, and you can create any world you can create, any magic abilities that you can come up with in your mind, you can write and put on the page and you can read about. And there are so many different sub genres in fantasy. There's the romantasy, half romance, half fantasy, and I am fascinated by it. So I'm very excited to explore these 10 fantasy books. So let's take a look at 10 fantasy books, not in any kind of particular order. I just went to the bookstore and looked at a bunch of fantasy books and came up with 10 that you could take a look at and maybe use to start to read in this genre of fantasy. Let's take a look at top fantasy books. First, and again, this is in no particular order. First is Where the Forest Meets the Stars by Glendy Vereth. It's a top 10 Amazon selection. Also made the list of the best books from the Wall Street Journal and is a Washington Post bestseller. It's also a Goodreads Choice Award finalist. It's a gorgeously stunning debut. This is Vanderelf's first book. A mysterious child teaches two strangers how to love and trust again. After the loss of her mother and her own battle with breast cancer, Joanna Teal returns to her graduate research on nesting birds in rural Illinois. Determined to prove that her recent hardships have not broken her, she throws herself into her work from dusk to dawn, until her solitary routine is disrupted by the appearance of a mysterious child who shows up at her cabin barefoot and covered in bruises. Time passes, and the more time they spend together, the more questions she has. How does a young girl not only read, but understand Shakespeare? And why do good things keep happening every time she's around? Though they have formed this incredible bond, they know difficult choices must be made. And as the summer nears an end, Ursula gets closer to her fifth miracle. Her dangerous past closes in, and when it finally catches up to them, all of their painful secrets will be forced into the open, and their fates will be left to the stars. Looks like a fascinating read there. And and that's of course what the back of the book says, but where the forest meets the stars. I like that. Next up, how about Assassin, the dark epic fantasy? It is book one in the Dark Blade series by Andy Peliquin. And the back of the book says, all of Veralmus knows the legend of the hunter. Relentless, immortal, death-walking, the greatest assassin who ever lived. Pay the master killer his due, and the hunter will execute any target, carry out any contract, no matter how impossible. The price of the hunter's vengeance is high, paid in blood and eternal damnation. Not even an army of crooks, cutthroats, and demonic creatures of nightmares can stand in his way. Ooh, spooky. I like that. Assassin, a dark epic fantasy novel by Andy Peliquin. Moving forward in great fantasy books, how about The Pits of Istar? It is book one of the Panlore Saga series by Benjamin Keck. It's the first book in the trilogy. Back of the book says, betrayed, exiled, thrown into the pits of Itar. Raya has lost everything, her home and her freedom. In a city ruled by corruption and cruelty, she's forced to fight for survival among thieves and killers. But even in the darkness, she refuses to break. When an unexpected alliance offers her a chance for revenge, Raya must decide how far she's willing to go and what she's willing to become. Perfect for readers who enjoy dark, character-driven fantasies. Some other ones that would be like this would be Mistborn, which we're going to talk about, Red Rising, Throne of Glass, which I saw in the bookstore the other day. But it is a gripping tale of courage, betrayal, and the rise above the shadows. The Pits of Ithtar by Benjamin Keck. Well, this next one for fantasy books was a Goodreads Award winner and a New York Times Award winner, Alchemized by Sin Lin Yu. It's a riveting dark fantasy, and it's a debut novel from Sin Lin Yu. And it's about a woman who's missing memories and whose fights to survive in a war-torn world of necromancy, and the man tasked with unearthing the deepest secrets of her past. Once a promising alchemist, Helen Moreno is now a prisoner of war. Helen Moreno is now a prisoner of war and of her own mind. Her resistance friends and allies have been brutally murdered, her abilities suppressed, and the world she knew destroyed. To uncover the memories buried deep inside her, Helena is sent to High Reserve, one of the world's most powerful and ruthless necromancers in history. Trapped in his crumbling estate, Helena's fight to protect her lost history and to preserve the remaining shreds of her former self is just beginning. It looks very, very interesting. We're definitely going to have to check that out. It's won a whole bunch of awards, and I want to say it was even nominated for a National Book Award, possibly. But Sin Lin Yu brings us Alchemized. We'll definitely check out that fantasy novel for sure. Well, this next one is kind of interesting because it's an acquaintance of mine, a neighbor, and here in Northwest Florida. And I'm a first-time fantasy reader, so I'm just getting started. And she's got a great book. It's S.D. Houston. It's called The Clash of the Goddesses. If you enjoy epic fantasy and mythologies, you're going to enjoy this one. It's a set of 3 books, and it's set in 3rd century Ireland. Maybe we'll come back and revisit this in our special on Irish books. It's got, Irish mythologies and a heavy dose of Greek mythology as well. The Clash of the Goddesses trilogy includes Blood of the Lily, Soul of the Rose, and Tears of the Marigold. Kind of an interesting floral arrangement there. Also out now is A Curse of Scales and Feathers. I love that title. A Curse of Scales and Feathers. Quote, she's tormented for being different. He's sick of burying his wives. When their fates are bound, they can forge a peace that intertwines their hearts. If you like resilient heroines, slow burn relationships, and deeply realized worlds, you'll adore this story, according to the publisher. You can visit her at www.sdhouston, right there on the bottom of the page. She also does a readers group, which is awesome, and she's an author coach, and she's the founder of a yearly event for authors, for independent authors. And we'll put links to those right in the bottom and in the show description. S.D. Houston, how about it for The Clash of the Goddesses? Well, next up is popular fantasy author Kaylee Hart. Boy, she's all over the charts. And she's got a new book out called Brimstone. It's a #1 book on the Amazon charts and a #1 New York Times bestseller. It is a romancy series with high drama, higher stakes, and deadly consequences. Duty, blood, honor, power. The hidden dangers await down the narrow alleyways of the Silver City, and unfolding secrets and posing impossible threats. We're going to do a complete review of that book, so I don't want to tell you too much about it. But Kaylee Hart comes into the fantasy realm with another great book, Brimstone. Moving forward for fantasy books, how about Project Hail Mary, a novel by Andy Weir? Been hearing about this book all over. It's on my list, and it's a #1 New York Times bestseller from the author of The Martian, one of my favorite movies. And it's soon to be a major motion picture with Ryan Gosling, directed by Peter Lord, with a screenplay by Drew Goddard. Project Hail Mary, a novel. A lone astronaut must save Earth from disaster in the propulsive cinematic thriller full of suspense, humor, and fascinating science. It is also a Hugo Award finalist and, according to the critics, one of the year's best books. Been well reviewed in the New York Public Library, Parade, Newsweek, Polygon, Library Journal, New York Times. It was a New York Times reader's pick as one of the 100 best books of the 21st century. Wow. How about that? Project Hail Mary, a novel by Andy Weir. Well, for great fantasy reads, how about The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gilling? It's the first book of 2, The Stonewater Kingdom, and it was an editor's pick for 2025, and also was on the Goodreads Best Book of the Year list for 2025. She's a best-selling author, and it is the next big romancy sensation. It's gothic, miscloaked tale of a young prophet. She is forced on an impossible quest with a knight whose future is beyond her sight. And it is The Knight and the Moth by Rachel Gilling, a fantasy extravaganza. Next up, from a very popular top 10 fantasy author, Brandon Sanderson. How about it for Mistborn? This is a box set. It includes The Well of Ascension, Hero of Ages, and Mistborn. And that's not M-I-S-S, but M-I-S-T-B-O-R-N, Mistborn. And he is a #1 best-selling author that's been all over the fantasy charts for years. And this is a beautiful, I looked at the photograph, beautiful box set. The 3 books, Mistborn, For 1,000 years ash has fallen and no flowers have bloomed. The Well of Ascension, the impossible task has been accomplished. The Lord Ruler has been vanquished. And the newest one of the trilogy, The Hero of Ages. Sanderson really knows how to weave great stories together. And by the way, sample chapters are available for free for all of his books at his website. The link is in the description, www.brandonsanderson.com. Certainly something to check out. He has a wonderful rep. The Mistborn box set. Also, as we take a look at great fantasy books to get started with, how about The Blade Itself by award-winning author Joe Abercrombie. Logan Ninefingers, infamous barbarian, has finally run out of luck. Caught in one feud too many, he's on the verge of becoming a dead barbarian, leaving nothing behind him but bad songs, dead friends, and a lot of very happy enemies. Murderous conspiracies rise to the surface, and old scores are ready to be settled as the line between hero and villain is sharp enough to draw blood in The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This next author is also a friend of mine, Mandy Jo, and she's got a fairly new book out, Amarath. I'm going to mispronounce that. Amarath, Amarath, The Evil Witch's Daughter. The kingdom is in the middle of the Paracaster Islands, which is in the middle of the Karen Sea. The Grand Wizard of the kingdom has died. Who takes over? Amarath is a witch that grew up without her parents. They were alive, but both had abandoned her at the castle of the Grand Wizard of the kingdom. Mandy Jo really is great at weaving a whole world and doing that. It is a action-packed mythical fantasy full of twists, revenge, dragons, and more. And I am looking. It is on my TBR list for sure. And Mandy Jo is very interesting. Invited her on the show. Very busy gal. Hopefully she'll get a chance to come on the show. She is a multi-genre author. She's published works in fitness, fantasy, time travel, historical fiction, and she is a true storyteller at heart. She also is the founder of Creative Slingers of Ink. It is a vibrant independent author community. She puts together great little book festivals and such in Michigan and South Carolina. And she's got a passion for connecting readers and authors. And she also does a monthly book cover design award program. And she is all about helping creatives grow their craft and connecting, as I say, books, readers, and authors. Well, there you have it. Our great books in the fantasy genre for you to take a look at here as we start 2026. There's a variety of great fantasy titles to choose from. You get out there, make your own dream, and enjoy some fantasy books. Well, there you have it. Great fantasy books to get started in reading that genre, and you're going to love it and have a great time. And who knows, you'll create a world unto your own, kind of like Tom's cabin in the background. Yeah, fantasy books next to romance books, very, very popular. Get out there, get to your local independent bookstore, and check out a fantasy book today. Hey, you, put on your laughing cap. It's time for the jokes of the week. Well, I've been hard at work in the lab, sweating and pounding and working on some book promos. Hey, thanks again for coming by. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to tell your friends. Please like and subscribe. It helps us with the algorithms. Check out our library of videos. We're up to about 35, 40 videos now. And we'd love to hear from you. If you've got a book that you are excited about and want to let us know about, or you've got some critique about the show, just send us an email, bookinfo@nextstopparadise.com. We'll see you next week, Saturday at noon Central. You make it a point to be here. Get out there, find yourself a good fantasy book, and you make it a great day.